What's going on, y'all? I'm going to tell you a little story today. Used to be told to my kinfolk. This man was neighbors to him. I think he had about 100 or 200 acres somewhere near their property. And my uncles and cousins and stuff, they knew him pretty well. He had died a long time before I was ever born, but I'd heard the stories. These boys used to go hunt his property a lot, and they would come and tell him that they would hear noises coming out of this mountain, if you would, or a hill he had on his property. And he kind of thought that they was just making it up or making fun of him. And till one day he went and investigated. 2 or 3 times he never did hear nothing himself. Till finally one day he heard something come out of this. It's a cave, is what it was he had on his property. So he goes back into his cave, takes a light with him, and he gets so far back in there to where you have to crawl. And that's why nobody ever went no further. Nobody wanted to get in the mud and crawl. But he could hear this vibration or this humming sound, if you would. Sort of like a singing sound, maybe. So he got him a light, and he goes on, he crawls down for a ways. Then it gets to where he can stand back up, and he's in this room. And like I say, I'm repeating the story that he had told. He was in this room where there was a bunch of boulders in a circle, and then there was a center boulder, if I'm telling this right now, in the center of the circle, and then on that boulder sat what looked to be a river rock, like a river slick's what he thought it was. So he's checking everything out, and he thinks that this noise is coming from this rock. So he gets this rock, picks it up, and he notices how light it is. You know, a rock this size should weigh at least 4 or 5 pounds average. This thing he can hold up with his 2 fingers lightly and toss it up in the air. So it's not really vibrating like he thought or singing, but it's unique color. I think I was told it was black, grayish, gunmetal color. So he wants to take it back home with him, set it on his mantle, because he's just impressed with it. So he takes this rock back, he crawls back out of the cave, takes it back with him, and takes it home and he puts it on his mantle. This guy, he used to keep old driftwood and stuff like that. People back in those days, they would find unique looking roots or, you know, driftwood or rocks, arrowheads, whatever, and they would display them on their mantle or whatever. I've seen other people do that. Well, he found this, what he thought was a river slick. He wasn't sure, maybe it was a meteor. But anyhow, he took it home with him. So he sets it on his mantle, and right away, within a day or two, sure enough, he hears this thing making noises. And he told at first that it sounded like that it was singing noises, like somebody singing, almost like a church choir. But he couldn't make out any words. And it went from that to making like a musical instrument, but not any kind of instrument he had ever heard before. But he said it was beautiful music that he would hear coming from this thing at the night time. Now, it didn't always do this. And then he said at other times it would vibrate, it would hum, and he described like it was trying to pick up an old radio station maybe, or something. You know, the best way I could say, like a signal. You know, he didn't have the vocabulary back then to describe it. I'm kindly helping him out here, I guess, a little bit. And he just thought it was the neatest find ever. And he would bring his friends and neighbors over, and some of them was fortunate enough to hear this thing do what it did, but a lot of them didn't. A lot of times, you know, this thing had a mind of its own. Whatever it was, it would do what it wanted to do when it wanted to do it. So he kept it for a while, and things started turning just a little more sinister with it. He got to where he thought that he heard talking coming from it, but he couldn't exactly tell what it was saying. Then he thought he could hear his name every now and then come from this thing. And then about that time when the nightmares started. He started having horrible nightmares. And at first he didn't tie it to this right off the bat. He had a nightmare that he was riding a horse and somebody threw a jug of fire off a bank in front of his horse, and the horse come to an immediate stop, and he went over the top of the horse and he broke his shoulder or broke his arm. I can't remember which one it was. So the next couple of days this happened to him. He was riding his horse home and it was getting ready to start raining, so he was galloping on pretty good when somebody threw something lit on fire, just out of pure meanness, out in front of him. And when his horse bowed up and stopped, he went over the top of it. And sure enough, it did. It broke his arm, just like he had dreamed. And there was a couple other things that happened. He'd had nightmares about a few things that had happened. And in his nightmares, he got to where he was seeing these things. Now, he referred to them as little demons. But what he drawed on paper, I saw a picture. I didn't see a picture he drew. Somebody drew me a picture of kind of what he had drawn back then. And it's what me and you today would call aliens. What it looked like to me, sort of. But he called them little demons. Because back then, I'm assuming this was in... I'm just going to take a stab here, around 43, 44 maybe. And so he called them little demons. And he got to seeing these things in his dream. And these things were kind of the culprit of some of the things that were happening. Well, sure enough, one night he had a nightmare. He could see his mama in her house, and she was coming down the steps when one of these things came up behind her and pushed her, and she fell down the steps and she broke her hip. Well, I don't have to tell you what happened. Sure enough, a day or two later, this happened. She fell down the steps. When he went to visit her after she got home from the hospital, she told him that she thought her house was haunted. She didn't know what had happened, but she was pretty sure she felt a set of hands push her down the steps. Well, he didn't want to scare her anymore, and she's already scared, so he didn't tell her about his nightmare that he had. But he knew he had to do something at this point. And he felt the beckoning to put this thing back where it come from. He felt like something was telling him it needed to go back. So, sure enough, he was going to take this thing back. But he just didn't get in no hurry to, like people do. So one night, again, he goes home. He hears this thing whisper. It continues to play music, continues to vibrate, continues to pick up radio waves like off and on. So he really hates to take it back because this is very unique. So he goes to bed one night and he has this dream. He dreams that he leaves the house, and in his dream he can see a couple of these little demons, and he can see one get up on the arm of the couch near his door, and he can see this thing take the little wire hook that the older people used to have when they lock a screen door. The little loop and the little curved wire hook that you put in there to lock your screen door. I'm sure y'all know what I'm talking about. Well, he saw in his dream these things do this. And then in his dream, when he come home, it was locked. He couldn't get in his door. So he goes to the barn to get some tools out of the barn so he can get his house, prise the door open. I don't know if he's going to have to take the hinges off or cut the screen or what he's going to have to do, but he's going to have a set of tools. So in his dream, he goes to the barn to get his tools, and in the darkness of the barn, something happens to him. Next thing he knows, in his dream, he sees himself laying on the ground. He's dead. He is dead in his dream. He wakes up, and he's absolutely terrified. So he is going to take that thing back that evening. He had some errands he had to run, but that evening, that thing is going back because this was one of those vivid dreams. So he goes and he visits his mother. He checks on her, make sure she's doing okay. He comes back that day, and guess what? The screen door's locked. Now, there's no way that this can accidentally happen. You know, the odds of shutting that door and that little wire thing jumping up and falling in that little circle, that little iron loop, is 1 out of a million. And it hits him. It hits him about the dream. He is fully aware of what's fixing to happen to him. So instead of going to the barn, he goes back to his mom's house, where he stays all night. At this point, he's terrified. The next morning, he goes back to his house. He breaks out the window of his house, goes in the window, retrieves this thing, we'll call it a rock, retrieves this rock, goes out the front door, and he takes it back to the cave. He goes back in that cave, and it's vibrating. It's doing all the things that people have seen it do. And he puts it back where it goes. And he tells that as soon as he does that, that this feeling of relief just comes over him instantly. You know, it snuck up, this feeling of dread snuck up over him over a period of time, little by little, but this feeling of relief just flooded in as soon as he put this rock back. So, after he puts the rock back, he gets back home, no more trouble. Everything's fine. He leads a happy, normal life. I was told that he had the mouth of the cave covered up. He had a couple of kids, and they were quite older than him. I mean, not older than him, but they were quite older. So they didn't really go out and look, you know, they wasn't really worried about the cave or finding this thing. They saw what it done to him. So they wasn't really up for looking for this. So to this day, as far as I know, somewhere on that 200 acres of property is a cave hidden with this thing still in it. Now, I've had buddies who's hunted that back in the day, and I've had a few claim that they can hear some buzzing and singing. I've actually had one or two that don't even know this story. You know, if you didn't know this family or didn't live close to them, then this story, you've never heard this story. Claim that hear singing or gospel singing coming out of the mountains and out of the hills there around them. You know, not know what it is. Of course, these mountains and hills do a lot of strange things. But I just wonder if that's still there today. These old mountains have a lot of secrets, and they don't give them up very easy. But who knows what that is, if that's from another time, place, civilization, space. I mean, that's just something that's unexplained. I saw a picture of it. It was in black and white. I couldn't tell much about it. To me, it looked like your normal, everyday rock. I couldn't tell that it was ultralight by looking at the picture, you know. But anyway, the odd thing about this is I saw the other day where this land is getting ready to be developed. And I just wonder, during all this development, if this cave and this stuff will be found or overturned. I've walked the property just a little bit myself. I've never seen the cave, and I've never heard anything. But I wonder now if somebody is going to find this and what the ramifications of somebody finding it are possibly going to be. I just thought that's kind of odd, kind of an odd story. It's one that I've told a few people and stuff around. People kind of look at you funny when you tell stories like this. You all on here is about the only ones I tell a lot of these stories to anymore. But anyhow, I was supposed to have my dog in this video. Somebody asked about her, actually quite a few people. She's still doing good, she's fine. It's a little bit too cool out today to get her out. She's kind of lazy and don't want to go on long walks, so that's how come you hadn't seen her in a while. She lays down on me, gives up on me, but she is a rescue. The person who had her was a drug addict, and they would lock her in the closet for days upon days at a time with no food, and so she's very clingy now and stuff. She's a full-time job, but we share her with my wife's family, not her family, and she's happy now. She leads a good life and she's spoiled, so we take good care of her. But I'll get her back on here. She likes to make an appearance. She kind of thinks she's a famous diva now anyway. We call her Foxy, so. But anyhow, guys, I've got a few more videos I want to shoot pretty soon. I've got one that I'm torn about shooting. I don't know if I'll shoot it or not. I've got another one called the Screamer, and that's kind of an old hillbilly legend when you hear the screaming lady of the nighttime, and people in these mountains that have heard it and what's happened to them. But anyway, for now, I'll get off from here, guys, and I appreciate every one of y'all. I really do. And it won't be long till we'll walk and we'll have another talk pretty soon. Thank you, guys. See y'all. Bye.